All right, now joining us on Tennis Channel Inside In, time for the annual check-in with the former world number one, the four-time major champion, the Hall of Famer, and maybe more importantly than that, you're the host of Ninja Warrior in Australia, that's on the Nine Network. So
that is a fact, and I'm an annual visitor here for our Gab Fest. I'm excited to be back. Thanks for having me.
So it's Jim Courier, and yeah, I mean, Ninja Warrior, I had to look that up. Nine Network, they love you down there. Do you have the same call for that, or do you kind of mix up phrases?
So that was significantly different. I only did one season for them, and I think I killed the show. But it was a lot of fun to do it. It was very different, and I think it's helped me become a better broadcaster because it is a very different skill being a host and of a show that's that big with that many people working on it. It was exciting. It was a thrill, and it'd be fun to do something like that again.
So at this point, and we've had a lot of fans of Tennis Channel that have reached out to me and other people, and they love your work, obviously, but they're starting to notice what I've noticed, that the humor is seeping in. You're getting more and more comfortable. Right? And there's, like yesterday we've had, I saw a bad drop shot, and you said, yeah, they need a flight attendant on there. You worked befuddled in, of course. You'll work in words. But there's another thing, too, and I noticed it, and I'm going to go to the video wall here, because you like to reference a certain movie in particular, and I've caught it watching enough of your matches. So we made a nice tribute to it there as well.
Right, there it is. So we do love that one. Yeah, listen, Anchorman is one of the classics, and you know how much I love that movie. If you do listen with a fine-tooth comb, Brett Haber and I reference it quite a bit, and it's kind of mocking what we do at the same time. But and we had the thrill one time of having Will Ferrell up in the booth with us up in Indian Wells.
How do you keep a straight face during that? Like it's got to be tough, right?
You don't. You go with it. You can't keep a straight face with that guy in the room.
Yeah, I heard I think it was in Roland Garros last year or 2 years ago. Hard to remember, but you used the phrase "it stings nostrils," and I just sat out of my chair. So
you reminded me I need some new material. I need to watch some new movies and get up. Get caught up.
But I do think that you hit on something good, and we're going to get to the tennis in a second. But the broadcasting, yourself, Brett Haber, and our entire roster do a great job. But that self-deprecating humor, I think it's a good lesson, right? Don't take yourself too seriously. We all care about this, but it is just a game, and it's fun.
Well, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. And look, our bosses here at Tennis Channel do a great job of reminding us that we're in the entertainment business, and people do take the tennis seriously, and we should, but there are also times for some levity and to not take ourselves too seriously, and hopefully make people laugh or chuckle along the way while they're seeing the best tennis players in the world ply their trade.
They certainly are. I just thought like you're getting to that stage where maybe it's Bob Uecker-esque, like you're going to get into the Mr. Baseball realm, one of my personal favorites.
I love Bob Uecker. I'm hoping to have the kind of run he's had.
Well, I mean, look, it's always fun, especially now. We've done this 3 years running. I thought about doing like a Rocky 3 like trailer or poster, but 3 years, 3 different years, and now after years of talking to you, it's the first time I've really felt like there's kind of a seismic shift, and it's not just because Nadal is retiring. It's Federer had been gone, Djokovic hasn't played as much, didn't have the success he's used to, and you have two guys who, for a golf guy like you, they're leaders in the clubhouse right now, in Sinner and Alcaraz.
And Murray retired this year as well. Yeah. So many of the names that we'd come to rely on in the weekends of these big tournaments, they're departed. And Novak, I think, will continue to stay around and be a problem for the top guys, but it's going to be up to him how much he's going to engage with them. It's certainly not going to be on a full level. So this year is, no question, a big shift. All 4 of the majors went to the youth movement.
The generational shift, too. And we talk about over time. I think it's a little unfair to the 90s generation, say it's a completely lost generation. There's still time. Also, tennis history, that's kind of how it works. There's no set, okay, you run, and then this time, no, like Alcaraz, Sinner, and some younger guys than them are saying, we're here now.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's a group of players like Medvedev and like Tsitsipas and Rublev, and those guys are sort of 27, 28 years old, that were hoping that this was going to be their time, when the floodgates would open for them. And then all of a sudden, you've got Sinner and Alcaraz put up a dam and say, hold on one second, we're not going to let you in just yet. But I don't know that we'll see quite the same consistency out of that duo. We might. We certainly did this year at the majors, but if there's 3 of them or even 4 of them that really pop up there and are consistently there, that becomes much tougher. But if it's just 2, you might get an injury, you might get an upset, might get an opportunity.
Yeah, they went all 4 slams 2-2, and I went back and looked. Federer and Nadal, there were 4 such times. Obviously, Djokovic had a lot to say with that, but there's no guarantee this always happens. Novak Djokovic not at these finals, and I want to revisit something you said last year when he was going through one of the great years in tennis history, especially for his age, that you thought he had that Tom Brady potential where he could keep it going. Do you still think, given what we've seen, given the, I want to say, closure that he had in winning that gold medal and accomplishing it all, do you still see him as like a Tom Brady-like trajectory of more years of tennis?
This next year is going to be super telling. I think it's going to be really telling whether he adds a coach to his team in the offseason and shows up in Australia with kind of a new idea and something new to think about. If he doesn't, he might have one foot out the door. If he does have some fresh blood on his squad, then I would be bullish on him. And, that was certainly, I thought, a big moment this year when Ivanisevic departed early in the season, and he seemed disinterested in some of the tournaments that he played in, and which is understandable when you've done everything there is to do, especially when you consider him getting that gold medal, which was his primary focus. We'll see on a go-forward basis what it looks like. There's nothing in his game or his movement that would indicate that he's incapable of winning multiple majors going forward. It's all about what's between the ears and inside the heart. Does he have the passion and the fury that drives him? We'll see.
Yeah, I would. It's kind of a cop-out, but seeing how he attacks 2025 is a good way to look at it, because it was all about the Olympics this year, and then he won it, which is one of the greatest singular achievements this sport has ever seen. So does he reset? Does he want to reset? He's earned the right to, like all veterans do, walk away, but I mean, it's tough to stay motivated when you've done it all.
Well, let's factor in that he might have won Roland Garros this year, right? He's playing there. He's starting to find his form. He gets injured. And then it was a miracle for him to even make it to the starting line at Wimbledon, let alone get to the final on basically one leg. And he clearly was not moving at the level he needed to compete with Carlos in that final. But then lo and behold, a month later, he's holding a gold medal. He's wearing a gold medal. And you could see the difference in his movement from there. But after that, it didn't seem like he was as engaged when he came across for the U.S. And frankly, I was surprised he played Shanghai. I thought he might just pull the pin on the rest of the season and hit the reboot button. But went to Shanghai, made the finals there, another good effort.
Yeah, going through the motions for him as a final.
Isn't that crazy?
Wimbledon or Shanghai.
Must be nice.
Top 5 finish, even with the year. A lot of players would have it. I keep repeating it. But the ATP Finals moves along, and pacing the field so far, as he has all year, is Jannik Sinner. 2-0 in group play at the time of this recording. Jimmy's 67-6 on the year, and he's missed, as you highlighted on the broadcast, a couple big events too. So we are on the precipice of, and we've already seen it, but really a transcendent year in tennis, and a guy that continually got better each year. This was an explosion from Australia all the way to the finish.
It's been amazing how comfortably he's settled in at the top, right? Sometimes players take time to get used to the altitude when you're sitting on top of the rankings and all the attention that goes with that, all the obligations that go with that. I said it at Indian Wells. I thought this guy looks incredibly comfortable and focused and disciplined, just continuing to try and get better and work on things and not give anything away in match. So it's been a hugely impressive performance for him to improve so many aspects of his game, and he's still striving to get better. And then you put that in one silo, and then you bring in the other elephant in the room, which is what he's been dealing with once he failed those 2 drug tests and found out about it after he got home from Miami. In a dominant performance in Miami, what a shock to the system it must have been to get that phone call that you failed 2 drug tests. How? Why? What? And he's been fortunate to be able to keep playing because they're able to identify it. We know those facts, and we will find out sometime, hopefully between now and the end of the year, whether he's going to be able to continue to play, because there's an appeal, and we'll see if the Court for Arbitration of Sport rules in his favor, as the others have so far.
I just can't, and putting it to the side right for now, for this point I'm going to make, I can't believe how focused he's able to stay with all this going on.
Compartmentalized.
It's insane.
Yes,
like playing, because you're not just showing up, you're playing against the best players in the world with this king over your head.
And I would suspect that some of the illnesses, the viruses that he's suffered from this year have been probably a manifestation of the stress he's been under.
Yeah. when you think when the review of the year happens right after this week, Davis Cup, all that stuff goes down. When the review of the year happens from the tennis side, do you think he'll look at it as like okay, this was a dominant, transcendent year, or will those losses to Alcaraz gnaw at him a little bit?
Probably a little bit of both. I think he'll remember this is the year that his life changed because he became a major champion, and that will never be put back in the tube. That's going to be with him forever. And he backed it up all year long, and at the U.S. Open with this incredible cloud hanging over him. So I think he's got nothing but positive vibes about this. He knows how good Alcaraz is. Everybody does. Listen to all the players talk about Alcaraz openly at the Laver Cup to the microphones. They're all in awe of him. And Sinner and Alcaraz have a very special matchup. It's fascinating to watch, and that's going to be one for us to enjoy.
Certainly will be. And I like that Spinal Tap reference on TC Live, too, where Alcaraz maybe has more peaks and valleys. He can go up to 11, but Sinner is just always at 10. Well, looking at the rivalry itself, I mean, Alcaraz gets here. He bounces back today at the time where we record this, lost to Casper Ruud, wasn't feeling well, wore the nasal strip today, beats Rublev in straight sets.
Do you like the pink nasal strip? Was that your color?
Yeah.
Or were you going with a different one?
It was a little, maybe, lean into it, right? Go full magenta if you're going to go pink. I don't know,
Yeah. I mean, it was Nico Jari probably wants, wants a little love for that. He's been wearing them.
It's all branding. He's going to get the logo on there. He's going to sell them. It's, serious though, like, being sick in sports is not easy. I can't think of one that might be worse than tennis. There's no teammates to lean on. If you're under the weather, I mean, you can relate to this. It's got to be brutal out there.
Tennis would be a bad one. Boxing or any of those would be obviously difficult too. Any sport with endurance is going to be a challenge for you, and then you have to problem solve, and you can't call timeout. So difficult. I have a lot of admiration for him even lacing them up this week.
Yeah, and still very much alive with how the format is, but his year, on one hand, I mean, you win what they call the channel double, like just winning RG and Wimbledon in the same year is remarkable. Had a couple, dips, as you could see, obviously the U.S. Open, but also this is the first time we've kind of seen him make this fresh push for the finish line. So I think he's going to take obviously a lot of positives. He's got 4 major titles and a new position for him chasing someone in Jannik Sinner.
Absolutely right. All of that is going to be interesting on a go forward. This year was interesting for me to watch him evolve because he is still so young, and he played such a poor match from a strategic standpoint in Australia against Zverev in the quarterfinals, and really did a lot of damage with unforced errors in that match. And then Indian Wells, you could see him starting to learn how to manage all of his gears a lot better.
Right.
And it was unfortunate he had the arm issue and couldn't play through a lot of the clay court season, but that run in Roland Garros and the wins he had over Sinner, the comeback win in the final over Zverev, that those will mean a lot to him when it's all said and done. He'll look back on those and go, well, that was a huge moment in my career. And then, he'll have the disappointment of the gold medal that's going to sit in his gut for another 3 years and change until the next Olympics happens in Los Angeles. So hopefully you and I'll get to enjoy that in person here in LA in a few years' time, see if he can get it then. Yeah,
it was kind of jarring to see, right? He never experienced anything like that, the setback, a guy that's as accomplished as him. But the evolution, what he's added to his game, the rivalry itself, and ultimately somebody that brings the, like you were saying, joy and excitement and levity to tennis. There's no one better than that right now than Carlos Alcaraz.
He's the biggest entertainer without question in sport. And the dynamics between him and Sinner, the differences there, those are the kinds of things that script writers bring, right? We get two opposite characters, right, that you can clearly see yourself in one of them, and then so you get a rooting interest in somebody. So it's certainly promising for the sport, no doubt.
And the way it's looking, right, they have their surfaces that they love the best, hard court for Sinner, clay and grass. It's like the old Nadal-Federer rivalry. When one wins on the others, that's like a big breakthrough. Well, the other guy doing very well, got up to number 2 in the world, Alexander Zverev, just a really great season. It's been the culmination of probably that long road back from the injury. And he played the most matches on tour this year, Jim. So he has been dialed in, playing well, obviously wants that major, but is right at the top of the game and looking, I would argue, as better as he's ever been.
I agree. I mean, he's an Iron Man. Let's start there. That's one thing that we often don't give credit to is the players that are able to stay healthy and stay super competitive throughout the year. Taylor Fritz is another player that I would put in that category. Players that can play immense amounts of tournaments and matches and just keep on trucking along. Zverev is a beast, and he's made improvements He's certainly. I've yet to see him get tired in a match and it really dog him and really hurt him to a point. He still can get a little bit nervous and anxious at big moments. We saw that when he had the 2-1 lead in Roland Garros, and he was chirping at his dad in a time when he should have been calm and focused, and it should have been Alcaraz who was expressing angst. Zverev showed everybody, including his opponent, that he was anxious, and I hope he'll learn from that for his sake, because you've got to stay calm and allow yourself to perform in those moments. But he's close, and he's never been closer, and you just keep knocking on that door. Someday you can kick it down.
The slam question is tough. It's asked of everybody who's great but has never won it. Do you think there should be a timeline on this, like next year, next couple years?
I wouldn't give a timeline. I think Stan Wawrinka has shown us you don't want to set those limitations. You know, Stan was a late bloomer and then became a real problem for the best players in the world. 3 times he beat the world number 1 in major finals.
Future generations are going to look at Stan and be like, how did this happen?
He's he's your inspiration.
He is. More with Jim Courier here on Tennis Channel Inside In, talking ATP Finals and 2024 season in review. Another player who's done phenomenally well, just keeps raising the bar, doing well here as well as Taylor Fritz. Made the U.S. Open final. He's played himself, Jim, into a bona fide top 5 level. Not just one run, not just here or there.
Yep.
Every week he's one of the best players.
This year's been a major breakthrough for him, literally. And this has been the year that he's become a real factor in the majors that he's played in, to his credit. And he's really consistently putting himself into position. And obviously got outplayed in that U.S. Open final. If you watched it, you saw that Sinner was able to do things on defense to offense that Taylor was unable to match, and that will continue to be a difficult matchup, not just for Taylor, but for most players on tour. Yeah. But similar to Zverev, if Taylor can keep putting himself into position, there's no guarantees that it's always going to be one of those guys on the other side of the net. Yeah. I mean, if you put Taylor and Sasha in the ring for a major final, that would be something to see, wouldn't it? I would love to see both of those guys have that type of opportunity. We've seen Sasha have it with Dominic Thiem. What has he learned since then? What does Taylor learn from his U.S. Open experience? Yeah. That'd be fun to watch in 2025.
Sure would. Taylor's had Sasha's number this year, a couple major wins for him. And, I speak highly of, obviously, the work Michael Russell's done. I'm a Paul Annacone guy, as I know you are. Everything that Taylor's done, the physicality, he's not tired ever. The Tiafoe semifinal match proved that. But on a tennis side, and I asked this question, seriously, how much better can he get? He's gotten so much better every year. Is there another level to go?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's the ability to transition to the net is something that he can continue to work on and be more efficient at the net and read the play better. That's something that comes with just time and practice. Knowing where to be at the net is really important, and it's something that it's like flying a plane. The more hours in the cockpit you get, the better you are with dealing with those situations. So I think he can do better on that. I think he's very close to, capitalizing on all of his assets. The guy has improved his movement. He's gotten stronger. You don't have to question his fitness, as you mentioned. Now it's about maintaining what you're doing well and minor improvements on the things where make that drop shot a little bit more fluent, right? That's a shot that can be super effective for him. It's not natural. But if you, again, practice, and then suddenly that becomes a language you can speak.
Yeah, the 2 number 1, you read my mind, 2 number 1 players, men and women, Sabalenka, Sinner, both added drop shots to their arsenal. You can always get better at every level. Yeah. And Fritz is right there. And these Americans have been pushing 3 years in a row. I've kind of asked the question, is it going to happen? I feel like we're getting closer with Fritz. Tommy Paul had another year where he was on the doorstep. Shelton's right in the mix. Tiafoe is a big match player. We'd like to see maybe more consistency tour-wise, but these guys are getting better. We can see it. It's just maybe the results will happen soon.
It's a great generation. The results are happening. These guys all of them have been inside the top 20, some of them inside the top 10 in the last year. Taylor's obviously still the alpha to his credit. He dropped out of the top 10 and then pushed his way back up. So it's been impressive for him to reestablish that leadership role. But I was impressed with all of them at various points throughout the year. And Shelton maybe didn't have that big peak moment like he did last year when he made the semifinals of the U.S. Open or the quarters in the Australian Open, where it sort of wowed everybody. But he's a better tennis player, even though the ranking may not reflect that. He's a better tennis player this year than he was last year. And that's what I want to see. I want to see him developing skills that are going to allow him more consistent results and more options against the best players. Because when you have his serve, you're going to have a chance against everybody.
They certainly are. The only negative thing I can say about Ben Shelton is what Dean Goldfein told me. They didn't know who the Eagles were.
The Eagles, well, they're a football team. I'm sure that's what he thinks, right?
That. Yeah, he heard Hotel California and he was just stunned. So
okay.
Got to work on that. But
I'll give him I'll give him a lot of slack on that stuff. We're unfortunately all we're doing is aging ourselves when we talk about that.
I mean, wow.
It's a fact, Mitch.
It's true. I know.
Gotta roll with it.
Other players here I wanted to mention. Casper Ruud got that big win over Alcaraz. We know there were circumstances there, but it was nice to see him right the ship at least for a day. It was not, by all accounts, by his account, the best second half of the year. I think there were some confidence issues. Casper's still very young, at 25, 26 years old, so still a lot of time, and hopefully he can get back on track.
Look, he really struggled last year because he was sort of fatigued, right? Yeah. And this year he had a proper off season at the end of 2023. And came in refreshed in 2024, and his results in the first half showed that. And, great results on the clay with the Monte final, the Barca win, the semis at RG. I mean, he was a normal rock star on the clay, but he also had good hard court results outside early in the season. Indoors is tough for him. It suppresses what he does in the same way that it did with Nadal in his career. The high bouncing forehand doesn't jump as much indoors, so it's a little bit tougher for him. But oddly, and Paul Annacone was making this note on TC Live yesterday, he's played well in the Tour finals. This is his third time playing in Torino. He's made a semifinal and a final.
Yeah.
That sort of is a head scratcher when you look at the rest of his indoor results over the course of his career. But the guy's got capabilities, and if you're not on top of your game, he's going to make you pay.
Could be a big match player too, because the common theme is he's playing against the very best, and it brings out the best in him.
That's right.
So I was trying to think too. So Andrei Rublev is here 5 straight years in the ATP Finals. Now, we've talked about potential a lot, but you got to give him credit. He's made this event 5 straight years. But I was trying to find players that maybe had some temperament on court, maybe redheads, and how they dealt with it. And if you had any opinion on that,
my hair's gone white now, Mitch. But I don't know if it's correlated to the color of your hair, but I certainly had to overcome my impulses, my negative impulses as a player. I worked hard with sports psychologists, with my coaches to try and control my temper because I made bad decisions when I was angry. And it seems like Rublev gets into that boat too. And he's not alone. He's just a little bit more demonstrative, and certainly the self-harm is alarming. And we hope that the professional help that he's getting is going to really make a big difference for him and help him control it, because it's not fun for him. There's no question about that. And it's not fun for us to watch either. That's a small part of it. Obviously, the biggest part is we don't want him to hurt himself. So the guy is so universally loved, by fans and by players. So it's really hard to watch sometimes.
And we love the passion, whether it's Rublev, when you were playing other players that have that passion, we like it. I know it's a fine line that people can't fully relate how much pressure is on there, but if he harnesses it, and even if it's just a little bit, and obviously we don't want to see him hurt himself, but the passion can be a good thing. It's just unfortunate when it keeps going overboard and does cost him a chance to win some matches.
No, you're right about that. So we'll wish him good tidings in the off season and hope that he can come out with an ability to harness that negative emotion and turn it to the positive.
It's always an exciting thing for players to reach here for the first time. I thought that with Alex de Minaur. You saw, we can take for granted, I'm sure even the top players might take for granted Djokovic always being here, Sinner and Alcaraz always there. But de Minaur was really, really proud and appreciative, as he should be, of earning the right to play with the best.
Especially considering how injured he's been since Wimbledon. The guy hurt his hip at Wimbledon, and he was misdiagnosed after that and came back too soon. He came back and was only able to play doubles at the Olympics, was hoping, according to the doctors, that he was going to be able to play singles. So he hobbled his way through to another good result at the U.S. Open, and it looks like he's healthy now. So he's a guy who was hard done by injuries and would have made it, I think, quite comfortably had he not gotten hurt. So it's great to see him do that. And what an inspiration he is. You look at guys like David Ferrer over the years that are, maybe not as many overt weapons, but they find ways to win and get in that top 10. And that's where Demon is. He's a guy who's smaller than most of his peer group, but his heart's just enormous.
It really is. And the work he puts in, the fact that, as you say, he what he gives up in size and strength, maybe in this era especially, he's able to overcompensate for, and has had natural progression too. So it's been really fun and cool to see.
I know. I don't know how many shoes he goes through every year, but that guy burns a lot of rubber on the court, man. He is speedy.
He does. Well, then the last guy here, and I wanted to ask you too. I keep bringing up the golf references though, but have you ever seen a sandbagger like Medvedev?
Medvedev's the best.
I thought
I'm in the bag for Medvedev. You got to know that.
I know. I just thought this, like, he lulls you into complacency, right? He says, look, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. This guy's so good. Before the Minaur match, I'm like, he's going to go out and win this thing.
And he won it in such a really different style, right? In a way, it was almost like the first couple sets he played in the Australian Open final where he surprised Sinner by being so aggressive with his court position and with his shots. Yeah. And I think he had 26 clean winners in 2 sets against Alex de Minaur. I don't know if Alcaraz could hit that many clean winners because it's borderline reckless tennis. And there was a way it looked like he just sort of let his shoulders down and said, like, I'm going to play this way come hell or high water, and I'm going to win this match or I'm going to lose this match, but I'm not going to do what I've been doing. And I think it's all tied into his frustration with the tennis balls and how dead that he claims that they are. And I think Sasha Zverev has very recently uncovered some information to back that up. So I'd encourage our listeners here to search out Sasha's information that he found from the ball manufacturers about how they're not the same quality that they were pre-COVID. So he's just frustrated, but he's never dull. No, never a dull moment with him.
He's not. And our own Mark Pecci actually backed that up. He showed a picture of balls after one rally where it just did not look good. Now, that's a shame because, I mean, again, these are the best in the world. We want it to just be nothing about the equipment that decides or determines this. But Medvedev is never dull. We haven't spoke since last year's Australian Open when you kind of walked him to his return position, which was some of the best television too. Just hearing him explain why he's so far back and the advantages he gets.
Yeah, look, that he is someone who is ready to go with whatever anyone asks him out there, and he considers it and he gives very thoughtful answers. And I knew that if I offered him that chance to kind of show us he was in a good mood, he'd had a win, that he might do it. And he did. And it was one of those moments where you're like, this is really cool because this is the horse's mouth, right? People are hearing his thought process on how he does something that is so different from so many players.
We'll see if he gets another major. I know that's the agenda. His age is getting, into the peak years, still some time, but Alcaraz Sinner being so good. The point being that if he doesn't, I put his resume up against any one slam winner in men's tennis history.
He's rock solid. I mean, how many finals he's had? Andy Roddick certainly would probably get my nod for someone who has one major but did so many things of significance. But, Medvedev, when his body of work is complete, might rival Andy.
It's a lot to be proud of there. Before we wind this down, ATP Finals, I guess, thoughts on, how this tournament could shake out. And ultimately, if next year we might be looking at some new players.
Look, I think Sinner's the favorite in the clubhouse. And it's going to be interesting to see where it shakes out on the other side if Zverev continues his fine form and works his way in as the 1, and if it's Alcaraz who works his way in as a 2, and then Sinner and Alcaraz play in the semifinals. I'd like to see them play, whether it's in the finals or semis. I think we'd all like to see that matchup. We shall see how it kind of all comes together. But as far as next year goes, I'm quite confident it won't be the same 8 players.
Right.
Who do you think might get in there? Who might be a new player to sneak in there?
I know I'm biased, right? One would be, I would say Tommy Paul has a realistic chance to make his way up.
That'd be great.
The one that I wouldn't say I'm as optimistic, but I feel like if Holger has the right team around him, he's kind of gone back to the basics. It was not the best year. It's kind of where his 4 is. His 4 is pretty good if he didn't have a good year and he still finished in the top 15.
Right.
So outside of that, though, young players that I'm looking at, maybe not next year, but beyond, Jacob Mensik, Jack, that guy has the tools.
He is super gifted.
One day.
I think you might see someone like Artur Fils there. I think he's 20 in the world right now. The guy's got explosive power. We'll see. It's going to be. It's never a dull moment, and it's never dull being with you here. So thanks for having me.
I did have one last thing though, Jim, before I let you go. Davis Cup final next week. Rafael Nadal's last tournament. I know it's the end of an all-time era, an all-time sportsman. You saw this from start to finish in the media realm. So just any stories that you have when you first realized how special he was, maybe even when you first realized how special he was off the court.
I think the first time that I realized that he was going to be a generational player and not just a generational clay player was when he beat Federer in Miami in their first meeting on a hard court. And that was a real wow moment because it was clear he was going to be a great clay court player. But for him to be able to turn that against Roger at his peak, no one was really challenging Roger at that point, and he did. That was the moment where I went, okay, this is going to be something to see. And my fear, which thankfully was unfounded, was that he would have a short career because of how physical his game was, how heavy he is, how muscular he is. That traditionally has worn out joints and knees very quickly. So, like many, I consider myself so lucky that he's had this career for so long that we've been able to just savor. And it's going to be sad next week. It's going to be terrible to watch him go, but we've been lucky.
We've been very lucky, and I keep going back to, older generations of me, my dad, my uncles, they talk about sporting legends, past and present. And the word that keeps coming up is just privilege. Like, it's a real privilege to have gotten the chance to watch him out there, to watch excellence and to watch him compete so hard every single time. That's the lesson you can take away from this. We're not going to be Hall of Fame tennis players like yourself or world number ones and everything, but you can work hard, you can keep giving your best, and you can treat the game and others with respect.
And he has from all along. The guy's been so much to admire, and I hope that he and his team will take advantage of not just what he's given the sport on the court, but also what he's given in the press room. I hope they'll put together a book filled with just absolute gems and observations that he's done in post-match interviews, because he's been someone who sees his world and the tennis world and the sporting world so clearly and simply too, which is, it's hard to distill that type of emotional experience the way that he has consistently done. So there's a book, a significant one, I think, that would be kind of like an inner game of tennis book that would be here 100 years from now to be done, just pulling the gems out of his transcripts. The guy's been unbelievable to watch and to listen to.
It's going to be an emotional time next week, but a fitting tribute for a legend, one of the best sportsmen of all time, Rafael Nadal. Jim Courier, it's always a blast. 3 years down, Tennis Channel Insight, and looking forward to the next one. We won't let anyone slack on maybe music. Definitely REM. We're not going to let him go.
Oh, no, we'll keep pumping REM and we'll keep pumping Anchorman, but I've got to find a new movie that's been made in the last couple of years that our younger audience is going to understand when I make a reference to. But I'm glad you got it.
The jig is up. Thanks, Jim.
You're the man. Thanks for having me.